Rule number 2. At exactly 10:32 p.m., a bloody, disheveled man will give you a choice. Help him or leave him to die. No matter how much he begs, you must choose to let him die. Rule number 3. Complete 2 rounds of patrols tonight. On your second round, you will hear a howling in the distance. Immediately run to the guard shack and lock yourselves inside until morning. You do not want to meet the creature that the howl belongs to. Well, that doesn't seem too bad, I said, stuffing the list into my pocket. Really, that doesn't sound bad to you, because to me it sounds like we're going to be werewolf food if we're not star athletes. I don't know what your definition of bad is, but it's a lot different from mine. Yeah, probably so, but assuming these rules are the same every week, Jerry's been doing this for God knows how long, and he's a dinosaur. Are you really going to let a geriatric old man outdo you? Zach sighed, standing from his chair. Alright, you have a point. Maybe it's not too horrible. I guess we can go ahead and get the first patrol out of the way. No sense in waiting around. I nodded, pocketing the vial of holy water and motioning toward the door. Ladies first. Haha, real funny. You're a natural comedian. Thanks, I've been working on my stand-up, I said, brushing past him. A tense blanket of silence permeated the air as we walked. It was more than just nerves at that point. Zach and I had been through some traumatic shit, and even though it had only been 2 days, I had been around him for long enough to know when something was up. Hey man, about last night, I'm sorry for dropping all that on you. Should have kept it to myself, but I felt like you deserved to know, I said, studying his expression. Zach sighed, locking eyes with me. You did the right thing by telling me. I still don't completely know what to think about it, but I would rather have that out of the way. I could see that it was eating at you. No hard feelings, I just need some time to process it. I nodded, shifting my gaze to the row of gravestones before us. That's completely understandable. What the hell is that thing? Zach and I stopped in our tracks. The beam from my flashlight had illuminated something red. My immediate instinct was to rush over to it, but thankfully my sense of logic kicked it at the right moment. Is that a body? Nate, what if somebody's hurt? We have to help them, Zach said, taking a step closer. I grabbed his arm, preventing him from going any further. Zach, I think that's the man from rule number 2. What time is it? He checked his phone, the screen lighting up his pale, wide-eyed expression. It's 10:32. Okay, I said, thinking out loud. Maybe we can just walk straight past him. That's simple enough, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't think we really have a choice, do we? A good point. Just as we were starting to approach, the blood-soaked mass had started to shift. Limbs began to writhe and crack. A wet snapping of bones assaulted my ears. I didn't want to look, but I had to know. I cautiously shuffled up to the thing, the flashlight shaking in my grasp. I was right, it was a man, but his features were all wrong. His arms and legs were mangled like he had fallen from a high-rise. His lower half was contorted so that it was flat on the ground, while his torso faced the sky. But the worst part was his face. The man's teeth were all shattered, broken yellow fragments clinging to his bloody gums. His mouth was open as if in a permanent, agonized scream. His gray eyes appeared blank, staring listlessly up at these smattering of stars shining down on us, until they rapidly shifted to me. "Help me," the man croaked, barely able to choke the words out. Tears welled in my eyes, memories that I didn't know I had suddenly came racing back to me in flashes. The night of the accident, 2 cars smashed beyond repair, EMTs and first responders pulling me out of my vehicle, a mutilated, disfigured man being placed on a gurney, 2 glassy eyes that would never regain their sight. It was all too much to bear. "Zach, we have to help him, please," I shouted, begging him to agree. "Nate, what's going on with you? The rules said we couldn't." I got possessed the last time we didn't follow them, remember? I dropped to my knees, tears clouding my vision. They had the same face. The man from that night and the one lying before me, they had the same exact face. Zach, it's him from the crash. Please, we have to do something. Zach grabbed my head and forcefully shifted my gaze away from the man. Look, I don't know who you're seeing right now, but it's not him. This man, thing, whatever this is playing tricks on you. It's not the same person, Nate. You have to believe me. My heart was torn into shreds. Between the unexpected rush of memories, the flood of emotions, and the adrenaline coursing through my veins, I was a total wreck. I wasn't thinking straight. But hindsight is 20/20. Help me, please. I broke down. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I cried and cried as Zach stood over me and the man continued to bleed out. I was useless. I pulled out my phone and began to dial 911. I could save him. What if this was my chance at redemption? Just one call, that's all I needed. Just as I was punching in the numbers, the phone was swiped from my hand. I'm sorry, Zach said, frowning at the butchered man lying before us, but we can't help you. Almost immediately after the words left his lips, the tangled mess of limbs and body parts began to pop and snap back into place. Before I could even begin to comprehend what I was seeing, the man stood from the ground, a wide gummy grin etched across his features. He made eye contact with me, his pitch-black, soulless pupils boring into me. In a low, menacing tone, he whispered, "You made the right choice." I blinked, struggling to understand what was happening. But in the nanosecond that my eyelids flicked shut, the man had vanished. I couldn't believe it. He was there 1 second and then the next. It was as if he had never been there at all. I took long, deep breaths, desperately trying to steady my palpitating heart. Zach placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It's over now, everything's gonna be okay." I closed my eyes, taking a moment to myself before standing to face him. "Hey, you're right, I'm sorry that you had to see me like that." "It really is quite alright, my son. You should feel no obligation to apologize." Zach and I both whipped around, trying to locate the source of the voice. We were met with the outline of a figure. He stepped into the light, allowing us a better look. He was a man clad in black robes. A pentagram necklace hung from his neck, prominently displayed against his clothing. His eyes glowed red and a disturbingly wide smile displayed rows of yellow, decaying teeth. But the strangest part, 2 twin horns jutted from the mess of tangled brown hair atop his head. Not to be rude, but who the hell are you?" Zach asked, visibly confused. Our unwelcome visitor scoffed, taking a step closer. "Who am I? You may refer to me as Reverend Clayman. Just a Clayman if you insist on." I didn't wait for him to finish. I retrieved the vial from my pocket, discarded the seal, and splashed the entire bottle into his face. I had had enough of the weird shit for one night. "What the? Was that holy water? You impotent buffoon. Do you realize what you've done?" No, not really. Am I supposed to?" I retorted, crossing my arms. "You've costed me a fortune in dry cleaning. Do you know how long it takes to eradicate the effects of holy water from an article of clothing? Days. And it takes even longer to wash it off your skin. Watch your backs, both of you. You've just made a powerful enemy." "Yeah, whatever. Get to scrubbing," I said to Reverend Clayman as he slunk away. Wow, that was pretty cold even for you. I kinda wanted to mess with him a little bit. Act like we'd be interested in what he was selling. Zach said, watching the dejected entity kick the dirt. "Yeah, well, I wasn't in the mood. That's 2 eldritch beings marked off the list. 1 to go." Zach gulped, nodding as he stared into the grass. "Yeah, just 1. We came to the joint decision to go ahead and get our 2 walkthroughs over with for the night, while tensions were high. No need to settle down and then go back out just to get worked back up again, right? And by the time that we had completed the first round, I was a bundle of nerves. I was on high alert, ready to take off into a dead sprint at a moment's notice. I didn't know what kind of howl that we would have been expecting, but soon I was going to find out. "Nate, what if we're too early? What if we don't hear it?" Zach asked. He appeared calm, but I could tell that he was just as freaked out as I was. He had a valid concern. We were already 2/3 of the way through with our second patrol, and the only audible sounds had been crickets in the distance and a soft padding of our footsteps against the grass. That's not going to happen. These rules, they don't leave anything up to chance. It's like we're on the set of a horror movie. Like there's an invisible puppet master controlling all the weird stuff that's been going on. I guess I never really thought about it like that. But now that you mention it, I think you might be right. Everything syncs up a little too well. Yeah, exactly, so keep your guard up. We're bound to encounter it soon enough. As if on cue, we heard it. The most menacing, animalistic noise that I had ever heard at the displeasure of experiencing rang out from the hills on the outskirts of the cemetery. It sounded like a wolf, if wolves knew how to scream. Zach and I glanced at each other, our faces pale as ghosts. "That sounded close," Zach muttered. "Well, that's because it was. Run." We snapped out of our collective stupor and bolted in the direction of the guard shack. Zach was slimmer and more fit than I was, so after about 30 seconds, he had a decent lead on me. That is, until the unthinkable had happened. The guard shack was in view, our safety beacon was just a few yards away. And then Zach tripped. Time seemed to move in slow motion after that. 1 second I was securely behind him, then the next I was passing by my fallen coworker, shouting at him to get up. But by the look on his face, I didn't think Zach would heed my warnings. He was frozen in fear. I skidded to a halt. I thought that maybe I could help him up, that maybe we could both make it out of there without incident. Oh, how wrong I was. "Zach, what the hell are you doing? We have to." I paused. He was staring at something. I traced his gaze and nearly passed out from pure, unabated terror. A beast with brown fur and yellow glowing eyes was locked in a sickening staring match with Zach. Shredded clothing clung loosely to its matted coat and its teeth were bared, foam dribbling from the sides of its mouth. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then out of nowhere, my worst fears were confirmed. The monstrosity started slowly making its way towards Zach. I could practically feel the fear radiating off of him as the behemoth advanced. My heart hammered wildly in my chest as it stood on its hind legs, looming over Zach's motionless form. It raised a clawed paw into the air, primed to strike, but it never did. "Stop." A low, menacing voice emanated from deep within Zach's throat, and at that moment I couldn't be happier to hear it. "Return to your lair. This human soul is mine and mine alone." To my utter shock, the beast released a disgruntled snarl and then did as it was told. I watched as it slunk away. I only made my way over to my savior when it was completely out of sight. "Modius, is that you?" I timidly asked, approaching Zach's rigid body. "Bingo. I couldn't let any harm befall my wonderful meat puppet, now could I?" "Hey, when you put it like that, I'm a lot less grateful that you showed up. Anyway, how did you do that?" "What, hypnosis? It's far easier than you mortals would think. And if you're done interrogating me now, I'll be taking my leave for the time being. You owe me." I rolled my eyes. Whatever. If it was up to Amodius, he would find a reason for everybody to owe him, and the price tag would be our souls. Sorry, buddy, not happening. Zach's body went limp, collapsing onto the ground. After another moment, he sat up, rubbing his head. What happened?" "You know that shitty demon you're always complaining about? Well, he just saved your life. Good. That was the least he could do after making me a national laughingstock. Zach muttered as I helped him to his feet. Yeah, no kidding. Now let's get to the guard shack before that thing comes back for round 2. Once we had arrived, things took a turn for the boring. 3 hours to kill and absolutely nothing to do. Maybe that's what made me ask him. Maybe it's the reason that the question had been gnawing at me to begin with. I'll probably never know. Hey Zach. Yeah, what's up? He replied, eyes glued to his phone. Can I ask you a personal question? He sighed. No, the picture of me sobbing was not a cry for help. I know that's what you were thinking. I couldn't help but chuckle. Actually, that's not it. When we came across the disfigured man, I saw the guy from the crash. Who did you see? Zach instantly looked up from his phone, returning a steely gaze. He opened his mouth to speak, but thought better of it before returning to his device. I'll tell you another time. You're right, that is a personal question. The remainder of the night dragged by. Now that I had made things awkward, time seemed to be moving twice as slow. So you can imagine I was ready to leave the instant my shift was over. Clocking out was a moment of pure bliss, but my high soon came spiraling down because I realized that I was going to have to do it all over again the next day. I didn't know what to expect when I showed up for the Thursday shift. Was Zach going to be back to his normal self? Was he going to be tripping balls on coffee again? Was he going to be there at all? I was afraid to know the answer. I tentatively pushed open the door to the guard shack. I could feel sweat beading atop my brow. Zach, you in here, buddy? But I was met with silence. I glanced around to find an empty room. I breathed a sigh of relief as I punched in, and then the door swung open. Hey, Nate. The way that he framed that greeting sent a chill rippling down my spine. There was no emotion in his tone. It was as if he had been replaced by an android. Zach brushed past me, avoiding eye contact as he clocked in. Sup, dude, is everything alright? You look tired. Yeah, I'm fine. What do we have for tonight? He replied in that same monotone voice. I gulped, making my way over to the desk. I'll go ahead and read the rules. Sound good? He nodded, his blank, cold stare boring into my skull. Okay, here we go, I said, picking up Thursday's list. Rule number 1. Once you start your rounds, you'll feel the dark presence behind you. Proceed to the back gate, open it, and then step to the side and close your eyes. Once the gate shuts, you're safe. Do not look back no matter what. Rule number 2. There is the statue of an angel Gabriel near the entrance to the cemetery. Place a white lily atop the plaque before it. Complete this task before midnight or there will be severe consequences. Rule number 3. You may go home at 2:30 a.m. Vacate the premises no later than 2:47 a.m. You will be compensated for the full 8 hours. Okay, that's pretty awesome. We get to leave early and we still get paid for it. It doesn't get much better than that, am I right? Yeah, let's get going, Zach said, robotically marching to the door. Geez, buzzkill much, I breathed, tailing behind him. I had barely stepped a foot onto the path when I had sensed it. I could feel someone behind me, like there were eyes boring into the back of my head. As much as I wanted to, I couldn't allow myself to look. Do you feel that? I whispered. It felt wrong to speak at a normal level, like that would somehow set the thing off. Yep, Zach replied without sparing me so much as a glance. I sighed and kept walking, opting to keep my mouth shut. Had I done something wrong? Zach's behavior was really starting to concern me. After one of the most excruciating strolls of my entire life, we finally reached the back gate. Zach had marched up to it, kicked it open, and then stepped aside. I followed suit, veering off the path. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for that nightmarish feeling to pass. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15, 20. After an entire minute, I was beginning to wonder if something was wrong. Had we screwed up somehow? My heart dropped into my stomach. What were we supposed to do? I was strongly considering giving up. We couldn't stand there forever, and it didn't feel like the thing was leaving. Just as I was about to steal a peek, I heard it. The loud creaking of the rusted gate hinges. I released the breath that had hitched in my throat. That was a close one. "Good job with that one, buddy," I said, patting Zach on the back. "Thanks." He began to wander off, but I shot out a hand to stop him. I was met with a spiteful glare. "Look, man, I know that something's up. If you don't want to talk to me, that's fine, but you're really starting to freak me out. I'm worried about you." He flung my hand away, returning his gaze to the path. "There's nothing to worry about. I'm okay. It's not anything you did. I just want to be left alone." "Alright, but if you decide that you do want to talk about it, just know that I'm here for you. I'm happy to lend an ear if something's weighing on your mind." "Thanks." We continued walking toward the guard shack to complete our final task for the night. A thick tension hung in the air like a cloud. I thought that it would remain there for the rest of the shift, but to my shock, after a few minutes, Zach broke the silence. "I saw my brother." I stopped in my tracks and furrowed my brow. That didn't make any sense. "What do you mean?" "Yesterday, your question. You asked who I saw, who the man's face was. I saw my brother." "Geez, I'm so sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay, it's going to stick with me." But that's how I knew that what we were seeing wasn't real. When I was 14, my older brother Jacob had passed away. He was 17 years old. He was always a bit of a delinquent, bumming cigarettes off of strangers, stealing booze from the liquor cabinet, you name it. The two of us always had a strange relationship. Compared to him, I was the golden child, and that's exactly how he saw it. Jacob thought that my parents and I were against him, that we saw him as a waste. It wasn't even close to being true, but it caused a lot of fights. All that aside, I really looked up to Jacob. He was so much cooler than I had ever hoped to be. He got girls, he was popular, and I envied him for that. Looking back on it now, I wish I would have told him how I felt. Zach trailed off as a tear trickled down his cheek. He wiped it away and took a deep breath before continuing. "I was devastated when I got the news. Jacob and a couple of his friends had tried heroin. His friends ended up being okay. They got to live. They got to go home to their families. Jacob didn't. He overdosed that night, only 4 days before his 18th birthday too. Didn't even get to graduate high school. The only silver lining was that he wasn't in pain when he went. And that's what I always told myself anyway. He wasn't suffering. That's why when I saw his face and his mangled and disfigured body, it just broke me. It didn't even kick in right away, but just the weight of it. Having my only peace of mind about the situation shattered. It hit me hard. That's why I've been acting strange lately. I can't get that image out of my head. Zach, I'm so sorry, that's awful. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him that he had been right all along, that his brother was at peace, but I couldn't think of the right words to say. Every time that I tried, they died on my lips. I felt completely useless. It's okay, I'm the one who should be apologizing. That was a lot to drop on you. No, I'm glad you told me, man. Sometimes you just need to get it off your chest. The trauma really weighs on you if you let it. Zach flashed me a weak grin. Hey, you're right. Thanks for listening, Nate. I think I needed that. Anytime, buddy. Speaking of, what time is it? I said, producing my phone from my pocket. My eyes grew wide as saucers when they fell upon the screen. 11:54. I glanced at Zach. His face as gaunt as mine. How? That should have only taken about 25 minutes. I don't know, I replied, pocketing my phone, but we need to hurry. Zach and I took off into a dead sprint, and by that point, we were somewhere close to the center of the graveyard. Logically, I knew that we didn't have enough time to make it to the guard shack, grab the lily and place it at the statue, but we had to try. Zach was a good distance ahead of me, as expected, but I was trying my best to keep up. Headstones whirred past me in a blur as I ran, my legs begging me to stop, but I didn't. And to my relief, after what felt like an eternity, Zach reached the door. He flung it open, throwing himself inside. I had just reached it myself when Zach burst through, white lily in hand. My heart throbbed with anticipation. We were in the home stretch. I summoned every ounce of strength that I had left and I pushed forward. I was utterly exhausted. An entire week's worth of creepy encounters was really starting to take its toll. But I knew that I couldn't give in, not yet. Fortunately, the statue was only a short distance away. As its gargantuan wings came into view, a nauseating feeling twisted itself in my gut. Something didn't feel right, and I couldn't quite place it, but something about the monument felt off. My heart rate spiked as we finally drew nearer. As we closed the distance, I realized what it was. I gazed up at the mass of stone in equal parts awe and terror. Its eyes shimmered a bright red, piercing my pupils with their radiating glow. A spear in its right hand protruded from the base, while its left harbored what resembled a mirror. Stone wings sprouted from its back, lending to its incredible appearance. I had become completely immobilized, entranced by the sight of the thing, because as I stood there, the enormous effigy began to move. Its limbs groaned as it stood from its kneeling position, looming menacingly over me. At that moment, I felt like an ant, small, insignificant, and completely at the mercy of the giant standing before me. My eyes grew wide. My fight-or-flight response had decided to completely abandon me in lieu of an alternative: freeze. I could only stand and watch as the spectacle unfolded. Before I could even begin to understand what was happening, the Archangel raised its spear with one hand and swung it like a bat. My blood turned to ice when I realized who it was aiming for. Zach barely had time to react. I looked on in horror as the solid stone staff sped straight through my coworker's face. But somehow, as if by the grace of God himself, Zach fell to the ground at exactly the right moment. I gasped as he slid like a baseball star into home plate, and he tossed the lily onto the plaque. The angel suddenly stopped. It retracted its spear and returned to its original position. The creaks and groans returned as its joints solidified once more, and the radiating red glow of its wrathful eyes was soon snuffed out. I couldn't have been happier. "Zach, you're insane. That was some quick thinking," I said, trotting up to him. He stood from the ground, dusting off his jeans. "I knew all those childhood Little League games had to count for something," he grinned. I chuckled as a wave of nostalgia jolted through me. "Yeah, I'm glad they did. Now let's go take a break. I'm beat." Friday arrived quicker than I thought it would. Leaving work early had allowed me a few extra precious hours of sleep, and I showed up that night feeling more motivated than I had in a long time. One more shift, 8 measly hours, and I would have an entire 2 days to myself. I wouldn't have been in such a good mood if I had known what the night had in store. "Zach, how's it hanging?" I asked, strolling into the guard shack. No complaints. You're awfully chipper today. What gives?" "What? I can't be in a good mood every once in a while, jeez." "Not saying that, it's just weird is all. By the way, have you taken a look at the rules for tonight yet?" I turned to him with a blank expression. "Zach, how would I have looked at the rules already? I literally just clocked in." "I'm just trying to make small talk, asshole." "Well, seeing as you seem incapable of reading them with your own 2 eyes, I'll fill you in on today's tasks," I said, snatching the piece of paper with Friday scrawled across the top of it. My brows furrowed. This one was different. Instead of the usual numbered list that I was accustomed to receiving, this one was handwritten. My confusion only deepened as I read aloud. Don't worry about the rules for today. Shauna from the day shift has agreed to put in some overtime to help out. Be prepared for the exorcism. Jerry. I pursed my lips, slowly nodding. Oh, I completely forgot about that. You must be sweating bullets, I said, smirking at Zach. He shifted in his chair before glancing up at me. Yeah, I'm nervous, but a bigger part of me is looking forward to it. I'm ready to have full control over my body again. Yeah, hear that, ammo idiot? You're about to be DED dead. I pinched the bridge of my nose, shaking my head. Zach, there are so many things wrong with that statement that I don't even know where to begin. Like what? He asked, staring up at me expectantly. Like what? I don't know, maybe the fact that you spelled dead wrong. Also, an exorcism doesn't kill the demon. You can't kill something that was never alive to begin with. Oh, yeah, O was right. Before I could continue scolding him, the door swung open. Jerry marched through it, followed by an old man clad in black robes with a white collar. Gentlemen, say hello to Father Abrams. He's going to be doing the honors. Nice to meet you, boys. I wish it were under different circumstances, he said, shaking each of our hands. Now, which one of you requires my services? I do, Zach squeaked, timidly raising his hand. Yep, that's him. Now that we have all the pleasantries out of the way, let's get to it. Follow me, Jerry demanded, walking back out the door. Zach and I shot each other a nervous glance. I didn't know where they were taking us, but I had a bad feeling about it. As much as I wanted to bolt from the property, I diligently followed Jerry and the others. I still remember the feeling in the air. It was eerie, like something sinister was foreshadowing itself. I wouldn't find out until later that my intuition was correct. Zach, I hissed, cupping a hand over my mouth. What? Where are they taking us? Heck if I know. Well, there's no need to whisper, boys. You'll find out soon enough. Father Abrams interjected, winking at us. Sorry, I didn't know your hearing was that sharp, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. Zach remained silent. I chose to follow his example until we arrived. Well, here we are, gentlemen, Jerry said, pausing before a weather-beaten hatch just inside the cemetery's confines. The green wood on its double doors was chipped and faded, and the handles were coated in a thick layer of rust. Zach and I shot each other a glance as Jerry pulled the doors open. The hinges whined in protest from lack of use. A cloud of dust billowed from the depths of the earth, winding high into the solemn night air. Well, what are you waiting for, an invitation? Get moving, Jerry said, snapping me from my stupor. I took a deep breath before reluctantly shuffling forward. I glanced down into the abyss, unsure of what I would find. Dark was an understatement. That pit was so devoid of light that a black hole wouldn't compare to it. I gulped, wringing my hands as I turned to Jerry. Are you sure you don't want to lead the way? I don't know where I'm going. Jerry scowled at me, sending a wave of anxiety rippling through my chest. Bunch of whiny babies, he mumbled, shoving me aside and producing a flashlight. Come on, we're wasting time. Father Abrams here is paid by the hour. The priest shot Zach and me a mischievous smirk. Oh no, by all means, please do take your time. Jerry rolled his eyes. Try to keep up and don't touch anything, you got it? Zach and I nodded, whipping out our phones. We tentatively followed Jerry down the steps, illuminating our surroundings. It appeared that we were descending into a chamber of sorts. The walls were constructed from weathered beige bricks, not unlike what I would expect to find in the catacombs. The air had a musty stench to it, as if something had died and been left to rot. The ceiling dripped in several places, resulting in sizable pools of water collecting on the ground beneath our feet. Once we had reached the bottom step, we found ourselves in a narrow hallway. Some of the stone to our sides had been replaced with glass panes, I shone my light into each one, filled with morbid curiosity. Most were occupied by some sort of relic. Some remained empty, while others ranged from daggers, gold necklaces, and vials of unknown liquid. One even boasted a severed, mummified hand. "Jerry, what is all this stuff?" I asked, peering into a panel to my right. "Cursed artifacts. Every once in a blue moon, the deceased family will want them buried with the damn things. We can't have that. So instead, we've got them here in reinforced displays. Don't even think about trying to take anything. That glass is nearly indestructible." "I'll take that as a challenge," I said, a grin inching across my lips. Zach and Father Abrams chuckled, and Jerry didn't find it amusing. We kept walking until we had reached an old wooden door. The thing looked like it might collapse at any given moment. "Nathan, push that open for me," Jerry said, cracking a smile. I got a sinking feeling in my gut. There had to be some sort of catch. I eyed Jerry suspiciously before obeying his order. To my surprise, the door was heavier than a ton of bricks. By the time that I was able to shove it in, I was completely out of breath. What the heck is that thing, titanium?" I huffed, placing my hands on my knees. Close-ish. Heavy gauge steel," Jerry replied, slapping the door with a low thud that echoed down the corridor. "A pretty good deterrent for degenerates like you." I returned to glare. Yeah, no kidding. Our party proceeded into a sizable chamber while I regained my composure. I fell to the back as we made our entrance. I wanted to gauge Zach's reaction. He had been unsettlingly quiet for some time. We illuminated the confines of the room with our phone lights. It was expansive with multiple long hallways branching off into the dark. I turned to Zach, studying his expression. His eyes darted rapidly from side to side, soaking it all in. "Hey man, are you okay? Your nerves must be shot," I muttered, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You want my honest answer?" I nodded. "Hell no, I'm not okay. I'm shitting bricks right now, dude. I mean, who wouldn't be?" I pursed my lips. He had a solid point. "Hey, you're gonna be fine. Just breathe and remember that it'll all be over soon." Zach took a deep breath, closing his eyes until he exhaled. "Okay, I'll be fine. I just have to make it a little longer." "Yeah, you got this, buddy." Just as I said that, the room was bathed in a warm orange glow. Jerry had lit a match and thrown it into a thin canal embedded into the ground. It spread to dozens of torches along the walls, igniting each before the maze of flames was snuffed out. "Okay, that was pretty cool," I said, surveying my surroundings. Old furniture and statues littered the room, coated in a thick layer of dust. A monument of the Greek god Thanatos loomed to our left, while our right boasted an equally impressive sculpture of Anubis. A large black table sat in the center of the room, its surface dark as obsidian. I suddenly felt a heavy weight crash into my shoulder. It was Zach. I turned just in time to see Father Abrams removing a syringe from his arm. "What the hell is going on here? Why did you do that?" I shouted, supporting Zach's limp form. "He's got a better chance of survival if he's unconscious," Father Abrams said, his jovial demeanor now gone. "Help me get him to the table." I silently nodded, dragging Zach across the stone floor. What did he mean by that? He had a better chance of survival. The realization hit me like a freight train. There was a real possibility that Zach wasn't going to walk out of that dungeon. After an embarrassing amount of effort, we managed to lay him flat against the table's surface. I glanced anxiously at my cohorts. Jerry and Father Abrams wore looks that could kill. I was getting a seriously bad feeling about the whole thing. "Nathan, take this," Father Abrams said, handing me a rosary. "I don't care if you're religious or not. Hold on to it and pray for the demon to exit Zachary's body." Father Abrams held a Bible in his hands, open to a specific page. Jerry closed his eyes, muttering under his breath. He gripped a golden cross in his left hand, and Father Abrams nodded to me, and thus the ritual had begun. Lord, in your righteousness, rescue this man and deliver him from evil. Turn your ear to me and save him. Father Abrams began. I squeezed my eyes shut and obeyed my orders. Come on, Zach, you got this, buddy. My heart thundered against my ribcage. Something was happening. I stole a peek for just a moment. Zach's eyes were wide open and they were pitch black. A nauseating smile was stamped across his lips and veins spiderwebbed across his cheeks. A chill rippled across my body. I regretted looking. Be his rock of refuge to which he can always go. Give the command to save him, for you are his rock and his fortress. Please, I don't know if anybody's listening, but if you are, I'm begging you, don't let Zach die. Tears began streaming down my cheeks. I had known him for less than a week, but as corny as it sounds, I felt like we had been through enough bonding for a lifetime. Nathan, I would like to offer you a deal. My eyes shot open. That demented voice, I recognized it. As my vision adjusted, I leapt back. Everything was frozen. Father Abrams was stuck mid-shout. Jerry's eyes were clenched shut, vehemently praying. Zach's face looked like it was about to burst. Angry blue veins were protruding from his temple. Okay, I'm listening. I want your soul. In exchange, I can make all of this go away. No more rules, no more deities. You're already damned. What reason do you have to refuse? I shuddered. As much as I didn't want to accept it, Ammonius was right. If I could prevent even one person from facing those nightmares, it would be well worth it. And if I decline, then the boy will die. In that moment, my blood turned to ice. Checkmate. Ammonius had me at a catch-22 and he knew it. Fine, you win. You can have my soul on 3 conditions. 1, you keep your word and you end all of the insane crap that we have to deal with on a nightly basis. 2, Zach lives. 3, you won't interfere with my life in any way, shape, or form. No trying to get me killed or putting me in a situation where I might try to off myself. You got it? A low chuckle echoed off the walls. I couldn't see him, but I could tell that Ammonius was grinning wider than a Cheshire cat. My heart dropped. What had I just done? You have yourself a deal. I'll see you in the afterlife. In an instant, time resumed. Father Abrams was shouting scripture and Jerry was mumbling under his breath. A dark black cloud of smoke began pouring from Zach's mouth. I squeezed my eyes shut, pretending to pray, stealing imminent glances. Once the smoke had dissipated, everything fell silent. I hesitantly glanced around the room. Jerry and Father Abrams stared at Zach's motionless body. I joined them, waiting for something to happen. Come on, Ammonius, time to make good on our bargain, I murmured. The words had barely escaped my lips when Zach shot up, gasping for air. He clutched his chest, his eyes darting back and forth between each of us. What just happened? Where am I? I didn't wait for them to give me the all clear. I raced up to Zach and I threw my arms around him. I'm ashamed to admit that I may have even shed a tear or two. Nate, what are you doing, man? Nothing, I said, releasing him. I'll explain everything later. I'm just glad that you're alright. Hey, you gave us a real scare for a moment, Father Abrams said, tucking the Bible underneath his arm. Jerry leaned against the wall wearing a grandfatherly grin. I felt closer to my coworkers than ever before. I was about to chime in when I felt it. My legs, they started to wobble. I involuntarily placed one shaky foot in front of the other. Soon, whatever unseen force was compelling my limbs took full control, leading me toward a dimly lit hallway. And where do you think you're going? Jerry demanded, his signature scowl returning. I'll be right back. There's something that I want to see. I was met with puzzled gazes. As I unwillingly passed by the trio, I could feel their confused stares boring into my head. I had a feeling that I knew what was going on, but I couldn't let them know about the deal that I had made. I continued down the dark, dingy corridor, brushing away cobwebs until I came to a halt before a rickety old bookshelf. The entire thing was coated in a thick layer of dust, and it looked as if it would fall apart at any moment's notice. "Amodius, why did you bring me here?" My arms mindlessly reached for a chest occupying the bookshelf. It had a metal latch, but it was so rusted and poorly maintained that it had popped off the moment that I laid a finger on it. I had just enough room to open the lid, reach inside, and pull out its contents. An ancient book, heavy as a bowling ball, sat in my grasp. Its pages were yellow with age, and the cover bore a golden inscription in a language that I didn't recognize. "Okay, thanks, but what do I do with this? It's in a foreign language." "Destroy the tome. Only then will you be set free." The oppressive force controlling my limbs released me, and I was nearly dragged to the ground by the insanely heavy book. I sighed. I never should have canceled my gym membership. I would be lying if I said it wasn't a rewarding feeling when I emerged. My associates were all staring at me in pure befuddlement. I couldn't blame them either. I didn't do a great job of explaining myself. Even so, I knew that I was about to save a lot of people from a world of nightmares. "What is that?" Zach asked, slipping off the table. My gaze locked onto Father Abrams. His mouth was agape and his eyes were as wide as saucers. "Where did you find that?" "In an old chest back there. I just had an urge, you know, like a sign or something." I lied, hoping that he would buy it. "Nathan, I don't know what gave you the idea to search there, but you might have saved us from a heap of trouble down the line. Do you know what that thing is?" "No, I thought you would," I said, plopping the brick of a text onto the table. I studied the others' faces. Zach and Jerry looked equally as dumbfounded. "This is the Tome of the Damned. Supposedly it was written in Latin in the late 16th century. It is said to be filled to the brim with sinister incantations. Honestly, I thought the vile thing was a myth. We have to destroy it." Before anybody had time to object, Father Abrams grabbed a torch from the nearby wall and lit the book ablaze. It burned brightly, filling the room with smoke, until it quickly simmered down into nothing more than a pile of ash. We all watched as it blackened before our eyes. Something about it was extremely gratifying, like my whole life had been one stepping stone after another leading to that moment. Once the last ember was snuffed out, the air seemed lighter, less demented. I turned to Zach, whose eyes were still plastered to these smoldering pages. I put a hand on his shoulder and I lightly shook him. "Hey, we did it. 2 rookies. Probably best not to talk about this to anybody but ourselves, though." "Oh yeah, and why's that?" Zach replied, meeting my gaze. "Because nobody's going to believe us if we tell them." It's been about 6 months since that day. Even after everything we've been through, Zach decided to stick around. After all, we still make decent money, but now our job is a lot less exciting. Jerry's looking at retirement, and can't say that I blame him. 40 years is a long career by any metric. As for me, I'm still trying to make amends for my mistakes. I know that my soul is a forfeit. Every so often I can feel Amodius' presence to remind me of that, but I don't let it get to me too much. If I can at least partially atone for the wrongs that I've committed, then I'll have a tiny shred of peace before I go.